Hello and welcome to the first ever UCI Cycling Esports World Championships. 20 national federations have named squads to compete for the World Champions jersey, and this unique event is the first time we'll see elite Zwift community riders race with both professional road cyclists and top triathletes at this level in a virtual world. Men and women will be competing over equal race distances of just over 50 kilometres as both races take place on the same figure-of-8 reverse course with a summit finish at the top of Watopia Hilly KOM. Now, in a moment, we'll be hearing from some of the riders taking part in both races today. But before that, here's the chairman of the UCI, David Lepartien, on what is a first for cycling and an historic moment for esports as the UCI become the world's first sports governing body to officially sanction an Esports World Championships.
I'm very excited about our first ever Zwift UCI Cycling Esports World Championships. Today, we are making history with this fantastic event. Esports are growing fast and cycling is once again moving with the times. As president of the International Olympic Committee's Esports and Gaming Liaison Group, I'm proud that the UCI, together with Zwift, is leading the way with these World Championships. This major international event will crown the first cycling esports UCI World Champions. Cycling stars across the globe are ready to battle for the rainbow jerseys at stake for men and women. This is a jersey that hundreds of cyclists across all our different disciplines dream of wearing. Each UCI World Champion can train and race in the jersey. It is a status symbol that is recognized and respected worldwide. Today, 2 more athletes will join the select group who have earned the rainbow jersey. We can now reveal the jersey that will be worn by our first 2 cycling esports UCI World Champions. This will be added motivation as they race through the roads of Watopia. Good luck to everyone competing in the 2020 Zwift UCI Cycling Esports World Championships.
Added motivation indeed. The rainbow bands are the ultimate prize in cycling. The chance to win the first ever UCI Cycling Esports World Championships jersey is an honour that really does mean something to these riders.
It's honestly hard to put how I feel about it into words.
Yeah, it's huge, you know.
It's something that I don't think's ever been done before.
Kind of historic moment.
Just to be involved in the first World Championships is incredible.
It's the first ever of its kind, and it's even more special that it's on Zwift.
If I am lucky enough to have grandchildren sometimes, I can tell them that I was participating in the first ever World Championships.
It's already an accomplishment.
It means a lot and it brings a lot of credibility to whoever wins.
Representing my country is another first for me. I always wanted to race for USA Cycling.
I'm looking forward to see my avatar with the Belgian jersey.
And I'm really happy to get this possibility to race for my country in the first World Championship.
It's just a really proud and satisfying feeling.
It's a privilege to just representing your country, and it's a moment that is really different than usual.
I can't wait to put on the virtual stars and bars and represent the United States of America.
Humble, proud, nervous, but I also feel I kind of deserve it because I've worked really hard on this.
The guy who's going to win that jersey is going to be an ambassador for the disciplines.
It's a very easy way to explain how good someone is at something when you can just say that they're world champion.
I think that's what everyone that's competing in it is dreaming about, and I'm trying not to think about it too much because I just want to stay focused on the race and the training and preparation for it.
The rainbow bands is something I've always dreamed or aspired to win.
I don't know if I even have words. I would probably cry and scream, and I don't know.
It would be a huge honour if I was able to pull it off on the day.
It's been a goal for me since I was a little kid, and if I can make it happen now, it would mean the world.
Going for the win, so let's see if it comes off.
Well, the riders are excited, we're excited, and two men who I'm sure cannot wait to get into this first ever UCI Cycling Esports World Championships are two of the most informed voices in cycling and e-racing. Our commentary team this afternoon, Matt Stevens and Rob Hatch. Good afternoon to you, gentlemen. Rob, to you first, what do you feel about the magnitude of this event? Just how excited are you about it?
Well, hello all, good afternoon to wherever you're watching around the world. Well, each and every rider today is a pioneer, aren't they? It's something completely new. We're seeing it for the first time, and of course, that's an exciting thing in itself. And then we're continuing this 2020 theme, this bizarre theme we've had throughout the year of unpredictability in all the racing. We've got two more chapters, the women's, then the men's race, rainbow jerseys up for grabs, and this combination of all kinds of different riders. It's going to be so good to watch, and we don't have a clue who could win.
And isn't that the best bit of it? Matt, like Rob, you know this course very well indeed. You know what it means to compete in Watopia. What in particular are you looking forward to?
I think first and foremost, Orla, it's a celebration of cycling across all disciplines, bringing people together within the cycling community into one place, into a virtual world to battle it out. So it's a historic first, a real celebration of everything good about cycling. And then secondly, the course that we've got here in Watopia, it's a course that I think will be familiar to everybody who rides on Zwift, but it's a course that will suit everybody as well. Whatever your kind of background, whatever your discipline, your strengths and weaknesses, there's something for everybody here. So I think it's going to be a very, very open, exciting, explosive and aggressive race here in Watopia.
And Rob, because it is a virtual race, riders will be competing from all over the world and from different environments. How much will that affect things, do you think?
Well, the time zone's going to be huge, isn't it? I mean, we're sitting right in the middle of our days here in Europe talking to you, but there'll be riders who've just got up and perhaps just finished their cereal and jumping on the turbo trainer to race. And then the other side of the world, you've got people who are going ready to get to bed. It's a completely different sort of line-up to the day for all kinds of different athletes. How you prepare, how you go about it is going to be crucial and intriguing as well.
And Matt, what about first-time viewers who are new to the sport? What should they be looking out for in the racing this afternoon?
I think a couple of things in particular. This, of course, is a World Championships. So riders aren't going to be racing for their normal teams. We see them on the road or in cyclocross or wherever. They're going to be riding for their countries in the national colours, racing and riding as teams. And secondly, of course, Zwift isn't just a fitness platform and a place that everybody can come together and ride. It's a game. So the gamification of Zwift and racing on Zwift is absolutely crucial. And me and Rob, no doubt, will talk in a bit more depth about the power-ups. But basically, there are random opportunities to increase your efficiency out in the virtual world, which can be the difference between winning and losing.
Cannot wait. And we no longer need to. We can cross live now to the Women's UCI Cycling Esports World Championships. And back to your commentators, Matt Stevens and Rob Hatch.
Well, it is a new dawn, it's a new day. A brand new era begins. Esports are here, and for the very first time at elite level. These are the nations we have competing. 18 different federations and a wildcard team made out of some of the best riders in the world, including the Road World Champion. Their kit's all lined up for you, and there are some big names in terms of riders to watch. We've got the riders from Belgium, Italy, Germany, Australia, etc. And of course, from South Africa, a huge name in the shape of Ashley Moolman-Pasio, who is 35 today and one of the names in Zwift and virtual racing. So moving up and on to the course that they're going to take on today. It's 50 kilometres long. It's a custom course. Many of you who have ridden on the game itself will have seen different parts and different roads. You'll have been up these climbs. There are 4 of them, 2 to be taken on twice. It's the Figure 8 reverse custom with an uphill finish today on a brute of a climb. 483 metres of climbing, the same distance for men and women. It's 50 kilometres long. That's 31 miles in old money. So those riders to watch then, some of the names to have a look at. The big names that you've seen on road, track, cyclocross and in Zwifting. Matt Stevens is alongside me. Who are we looking at here?
Yeah, it's a fascinating mix of riders coming across from all disciplines. I mean, we've got Tanja Ereth, a former Zwift Academy winner, winner of the stage of the virtual Tour de France, and of course, look at that, Anna van der Breggen and Annemiek van Vleuten, a current Olympic and world road champion, of course, and Lauren Stevens, real experienced out in the real world and exceptionally good at Zwift as well. Watch out, bottom left there, Cecilia Hansson from Sweden, one of the most accomplished Zwift riders you will see. So a real mix and a proper coming together, which is going to be very, very exciting indeed, Rob.
Well, the riders are already in the virtual world. They're on the way. Let's have a look at them in the real world. And this is where they are. In their garages, bedrooms, wherever around the world. Some on the balconies, different times of day, and pedalling on their turbo trainers. They have coaches, assistants, and this is how the race looks in real life. There are some pain faces in pain caves so far. There's a rainbow jersey up for grabs, and we're about to see how it's battled out on the virtual roads of Watopia. So let's go live to the racing, and this is how it looks. There's Eleanor Barker at the back of the bunch, who's been in quarantine back in the United Kingdom so far. She's had quite a couple of weeks already to get practicing. Looks like they're going uphill here, 17.2 kilometres ridden already. There are 32.8 kilometres still to go. And Matt, this is a part of the course that takes them gradually uphill.
Yeah, it certainly is. I know you pre-rode this course just yesterday, Rob, didn't you? Which took you quite a long period of time. I rode it last week, but it's a course that's familiar to everybody. But yeah, this is one of these long little drags. Lauren Stevens there on the front. Again, very, very accomplished rider. Yeah, it's an up and down course. There's not much flat. There's a section of flat in between as we go underneath the ocean that gives the riders on this course a particular opportunity to rest up. We're coming up to that very, very shortly indeed. We're just going down what we'd name the regular finishing straight. We're heading towards the marina now. But Rob, critically already, we've done 17.8 Ks, still a long way to go, 32 Ks, but I can tell you that we only have 30 riders now in this front group. Already the pace has been so, it's crazy.
Well, let's see how those riders will whittle down as you have a look at the race so far. Well, they began down in the village. Annemiek van Vleuten there wearing her rest of the world jersey, that blue and white, the Dutch woman. The Dutch Federation, because of the coronavirus pandemic, choosing not to line up an official national team here, but we do have the best in the world. And as you said, Matt, we're down to 30-odd riders already. And going uphill there. Gap of about half a minute, going up to 40-odd seconds between those 30-odd riders to the next little group just behind. They've been on the water, they've been uphill and down dale. It's been an interesting start and it's about to get even quicker. Well, let's get back live, let's get back to the action. We've just been through the village again, as you can see, Matt, down in Watopia. This is a course that anybody who's ridden on the game will know. 26 minutes of racing gone. Any big names have been distanced that you can see so far, Matt? I know you've been keeping an eye on the time gaps. I think it has grown since I started talking from around 35 seconds to, I think we're seeing gaps of 48 seconds now to the next group. And in that group, I'm seeing some Zwift Academy winners, and the big name I can see is Anna van der Breggen, the world road champion, at 48 seconds.
Indeed. Well, Annemiek van Vleuten is in that group chasing at 48 seconds. Lisa Brennauer, a former world time trial champion, is there. Dame Sarah Story is out of the back in that group. Kirsten Wild as well. So some really big, punchy riders have already lost contact with this front group. So some of the riders that normally would excel on the road really struggling here. And as you said, a couple of Zwift Academy riders. Ella Harris, the winner just a couple of years back from New Zealand, plies her trade. Of course, for Canyon Schramm is a rider that hasn't made this front group, along with Jess Pratt of Australia. So a bit of a surprise early on, Rob. It just shows, I think, how atrocious this race is as we head up the forward KOM with Ashley Moorman-Passio, one of the pre-race favourites, really heading things up and ripping up the pace.
Well, this is a key segment of the course, Matt, because this is the climb upon which the race will finish in 30 kilometres time. There's Ashley Moorman-Passio pedaling away and putting out a good 330 watts. There she is in the green jersey representing her nation, South Africa. I know she lives in the northeast of Spain nowadays, and we've seen her have plenty of success, haven't we, in the Zwift Tour for All and the virtual Tour de France as well. And today it's her birthday, 35 years of age.
Well, imagine that, Rob, winning this. I mean, she is one of the pre-race favourites. She's really set her eyes on this. And this is the first time the riders have got an opportunity to see what the finish is like, because this, what they're climbing up now, is the finishing climb. So they'll do another big circuit after this, around 30 Ks. But this is the first chance at race pace, Rob, to really get a feel for this climb. And it comes in 2 stages as well. A steep bottom part, and then a very brief flat section, and then a steady rise to the line with a little dip and a kick up. So at race pace, riders will get a real feel for what this climb is like. And as you can see, we're getting our first glimpse as well, Rob, of power-ups. And remember, there's only 2 power-ups on offer today.
Just tell us a bit more about what these power-ups do, as you rather nonchalantly described the finish as a kick-up. It didn't feel like that when I was riding it myself last night, I will tell you. But those power-ups, you can see these little blue circles there coming up and green circles above some of the riders. There's a helmet sign and there's a little feather sign. What do each of those power-ups do, Matt, and how are they used to help the riders in the game?
Well, basically, there's 11 of these randomly given out throughout the course. At every time the riders go under a banner, they'll be given basically a power-up. And a power-up basically gives you an advantage in game. The 2 power-ups we have on offer today are the aero power-up. That's the one you can just see on the top of your screen there. That makes the rider more aerodynamic for 15 seconds. And the other power-up on offer, which again is given out randomly, is the lightweight power-up, which reduces the rider's weight by 10% for 15 seconds. And there we go, there's the little captions just at the bottom. We normally have 5 of these on Zwift, but we've simplified things a little bit for the World Championships. So there we go, an aero boost and the lightweight power-up. And these are absolutely critical. And as I said before, they'll get them 11 times throughout the race. They might not necessarily want to use them for any advantage in terms of attacking, but if you use a lightweight power-up or an aero boost at the right time, it can also help you to slipstream, help just reduce your effort and save a little bit of energy. So they're absolutely crucial, and they'll be critical, Rob, on this final climb to the line.
So this is where the knowledge of playing the game, of riding on the platform, the gamification, as you talked about it early on, really does come into its own, doesn't it?
Yeah, it certainly does. So I think the riders who've spent the most time on Zwift, who've got experience of racing on Zwift week in and week out, which a lot of these riders do, they may have a little bit of an advantage. But saying that, we have seen some road riders come across and get to grips with Zwift very, very quickly indeed. And one of those is Ashley Moolman-Pasio. But yeah, this little group now, it's a bit of an elite one. And look at that, we've got Langvad there, the veteran mountain biker in this front group as well. She is such a versatile all-rounder and could be a real dark horse.
Yeah, Annika Langvad, she's in the red jersey there, just at the back and highlighted. She's just using that little bit of draft particularly well, as I'm sure you'll explain at some point today in much better terms than I can, Matt, that you can draft on the game itself just as you do in real life in a bunch. And Langvad, a mountain biker who's now a bit of a good rider in the classics as well. .28 kilometres remain, 22.2 ridden, and downhill now, Matt.
Yeah, nice little bit of a descent as we look at Lauren Stevens there. Again, one of the big favourites here. 33 years of age now, riding for the United States, who have 10 riders in this field. They're the country that has the most strength in depth. And it's just worth talking briefly, I think, Rob, as well, about the way that the countries were selected for this inaugural World Championships. 20 countries were invited by the UCI to take part. Not every country took up their kind of the roster primarily because of the situation this year with COVID, and the selection was based on countries most represented on the Zwift platform and the UCI rankings. And then we have some wild cards as well. They're basically the UCI and Zwift invited some wild card riders to ride. Countries could have taken them up if they'd wanted to, but not all the countries did take up their quota. Hence, a couple of wild card riders in this field.
Yeah, we had a couple of riders not able to start this morning as well, but they were made up for by the addition of Kristen Faulkner for the United States, wearing number 5 today. There's Kolczynski, her compatriot. The USA are really well represented in both the women's and the men's fields, actually. All wearing their real national kits in the real world, and you can see them nicely represented on the graphics there as well. There's Kristen Kolczynski, both in real form on the bottom left. They're the numbers she's putting out as well alongside. You can just see resting the legs a little on the descent here, down briefly at 120 watts there before it's up to 190. But it's that big number, isn't it? Watts per kilo that we're looking at, Matt. Those watts put out relation to the weight of each rider.
Yeah, and anybody who's ridden on the platform before, who hasn't, or anybody who hasn't actually, but understands power numbers, will know that to ride at 5.5 watts a kilo is exceptionally hard. It really is elite. And interestingly about Kristen Kolczynski, Rob, she's a rider who is relatively new to cycling, but she all her training is done on Zwift. She doesn't actually ride outdoors at all. But full time, she's actually a dueler, but spends all of her time riding on Zwift, and has excelled so much. She has been selected for the United States, and she is in very, very good form indeed.
Well, let's see if she can pick up a diamond of a ride today to take home the rainbow jersey. Brie Vine in Australia. Well, we wonder if she's in Australia or not. I mean, there's a light on in the background there. It's very, very late down there. And of course, you're looking for the Kiwi jersey in the bunch, and Ella Harris, who's a little bit behind in the next group. It is around 3 a.m. in New Zealand at the moment.
There we go.
All different times, all different setups. One of the most intriguing parts of watching this race today. So approaching the halfway point, and the group continues to be whittled down. 25 riders at the front. We're watching history being made at the UCI World Esports Championships in virtual Watopia. We're on the roads of the hilly reverse course. 25.3 kilometres to go, and we're down to 25 riders at the front. Interesting that there's a gap to some big names behind. We're talking 28 seconds to the next group of 5 riders, and then 1 minute and 20 to a bigger group of around 15 riders, including some huge names. Yes, we're looking at Lisa Brenner. I know that Kirsten Wild is behind as well. Sarah Story and Megan Barker down there. Story, of course, the Paralympic legend. I know who's riding in front of her Christmas tree at the moment. There's Jess Pratt as well. And of course, we're looking at those riders representing the rest of the world, the big names, the likes of the world champions, current and former, Van Vleuten and Van der Breggen. 36 minutes are there on the clock. And we're just going through the port here on one of the flatter sections. We've had both of the climbs so far. 2 more still to go. Of course, the first climb is a little longer at 2.5 kilometres. And then shorter but steeper climb. And everybody, by the way, also on the same turbo trailers here as well, Matt, which is key to making sure that everybody's using the same equipment, isn't it? And on the particular turbo trainer that they're using here, I know that they'll be rattling away on these wooden boards now.
Yeah, they're all using the Garmin Tax Neo 2T, should I say, which has been given to every single rider as just basically to keep everything the same, to keep that kind of continuity. And they will actually have the road feel. So on these boards that they're crossing through here, and on that little gravel section, they will actually feel the rumble on that particular trainer, just to add to that kind of real life feel on these particular surfaces. And the algorithm within Zwift will add to the drag, so it'll actually be slightly harder to ride through this gravel section and the wooden boards there, as opposed to the tarmac. So there's real attention to detail within game, and just in relation to the ride feel, not just the beautiful world of Watopia. And you can just see the volcano smoking in the background there.
We've got the Snowy Alps as well, and the Zwift as well in the background. Now that I mentioned we're on the flat here, Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio, the headline name in this front group. In the group at 28 seconds at the moment, we've got a couple of riders, and then another group back at 1 minute and 6 seconds. In that group, the current road world champion, who is Anna van der Breggen. We caught up with her before today, and to see how she would fare riding against some big opponents in a different platform.
It has been a really strange year, because in the beginning, of course, we had no races at all, and that was the first time really that racing is not the most important in life, in what we are doing. Then suddenly it started, but it started like straight away, everything behind each other. Nobody really knew yet how to do this and how your body is reacting on such a long period of important racing. So having a top shape at the right moment was so good for me and so nice to have, because it was such a strange period. I never expected to win, being world champion twice. I would laugh if you would say it before the season. So yeah, that was great. It's pretty special to be able to start at the World Championships online. For me, the first time I was really on Zwift was almost this year. It felt like meeting a new sport. It was nice to meet these new sports and to see you're riding in a different world and you're not feeling alone at all. I think it's the beginning of something, and if you have the first ever win on the World Championship online, I think it means a lot for a lot of people. For me, the goal is just to enjoy this new experience for me and to compete. That's the good thing.
Well, that's Anna van der Breggen there, the road world champion. What a year it was for her, winning so much on the road in such a short space of time, as she said. Matt, she's 1 minute and 19 seconds back in a group at the moment with some other big name riders. Annemiek van Vleuten is there as well. How will van der Breggen be feeling about this? Because this is a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, I don't seem to be super happy, but again, it is such a different discipline. And what you've got to bear in mind, Rob, as well, is that, as you said before, all of these riders are spread all over the world. That's one thing to take into consideration. And of course, different riders are training for different things. I think it's just wonderful for van der Breggen and Van Vleuten to actually be here and participating in this World Championships. But this is a very specific sort of effort. I think the most similar effort that I can compare it to in relation to cycling would be a cyclocross sort of effort. It's straight out of the blocks, very, very fast indeed. And then you're basically riding at threshold with spikes within that and then little periods of rest. It's a real staccato sort of effort, or at or around threshold, and that's something that a lot of the road riders aren't used to doing. So, but she's not giving up. She's still pressing away there. She's hovering about 1 minute and 19. So the group that she's in, Rob, are still riding at around the same speed as this group in front. As we look at Tanja Erath, a winner, of course, of a stage of the virtual Tour de France, bronze medalist in the German Road Race Championships, and a previous winner of the Zwift Academy. She's a prime example, Tanja Erath, of the Zwift platform, and of course the Zwift Academy, which is coming very, very shortly. And she has really matured into a very well-respected rider in both the virtual world and the real world.
And Tanja Erath is up there in third place on this little graphic we've got for you, which is the efficiency rating. Those riders who've played the game to the best of their ability and used their ability to follow the game, of course, and using the power-ups at the right moment, drafting correctly, they've conserved their energy the best. So Tanja Erath obviously showing that even though there are maybe riders who've achieved more things on the road, just like you can see Ashley Moolman-Pasio at the front here, as a Zwift Academy winner, she knows how to play the game, and she should be one of the fresher riders now.
Yeah, it's a brand new graphic that we've just introduced. Our tech people have looked at this, and it just, as you said, Rob, it gives us an indication of the rider's efficiency. So basically, the riders all there are in the front group, but the higher the number, the more efficient you've been riding. And Cecilia Hansen, just looking at there, she is one of the most accomplished riders on the Zwift platform, a regular winner, and she normally plies her trade for Team Hino, the dominant team. She won recently the Zwift Racing League in London. She was second in another round in New York, so she's in great form. But crucially, Rob, as you said, she knows when to use the power-ups, even though she might not use them to actually attack. She knows when to use those to save energy, but crucially, she knows how to draft. She knows how to sit in the wheels. She knows how to use the terrain to her benefit, and that takes time. But crucially, over this kind of period of over an hour's racing, the more you can save, Rob, as we know, the more you've got left for this punishing finale that we have.
Oh, dearie me, I'm not a good bike rider at all, and I found that out when we got to the final climb yesterday. I was in a right mess. So these professionals, these elite riders, they will know all about what's to come. Of course, we've been up the final climb, as we've said. We've got 4 climbs, if you like, on the course today, over the 50 kilometres. We've had 2 of them, and we're about to repeat what was the first climb. That's once they come through town again here. As you can see, the pier where they started the race, just on the right-hand side, and they're about to head up again into a climb that has a maximum gradient of 8%. The categorised part of it lasts around 2.5 kilometres, but it's a strange climb, isn't it? Because there's lots of changes in gradient. A lot of it's pretty benign, isn't it? Sort of 2-3%, a couple of short downhills, but then there's a couple of steep kickers as well.
Yeah, there certainly is. We're just on the approach. We've just gone through the finish line in the other direction. We're now riding away from the marina.
And we've got to move off the front mat for the first time.
Danny Christmas, not far away from Christmas, and she's looking to gift herself a bit of a present here. She's been really aggressive in races. She plies her trade normally for Lotto Soudal ladies, but has decided to go early.
Danny Christmas, if I remember rightly, was in fantastic form in the virtual Tour de France that we had for Lotto Soudal. I think it was on the Mont Ventoux stage that she was up there, and of course wiping the sweat away as we have a look inside at home with Danny Christmas. She's really suffering out there. She's got to leave at about 1.5 seconds at the moment, and it looks as though she's just trying to make it that little bit more difficult for everybody else before we get to the climb. Exactly the tactics she used back in that race up the slopes of the virtual Mont Ventoux, Matt.
Exactly, and I'm wondering if this is just a tactical ploy as well, because she's got a couple of teammates in this front group. In fact, Great Britain started with 5 riders. Sarah Story isn't in this front group, but she's got Anna Henderson there. Danny Christmas, of course, made the move. Megan Barker is there, and Eleanor Barker as well. So Great Britain well represented in this elite group of front riders. But a nice little test there for Danny Christmas, maybe just to test the other riders' legs and make it a little bit hard. We're going to head through the S's now, which is this undulating section, and then we'll do that approach to the climb, which, as you said, Rob, is steep at the bottom. Then there's a false flat, then it just drags on for ages. So it is a climb that comes in 3 distinct parts.
Ella Harris is still there. She's the one riding well into the early hours of the morning. In New Zealand, of course. "25 riders in the front group, headlined by Ashley Moolman-Pasio, 35 years old today and one of the pre-race favourites. Ella Harris there at 42 seconds in this group of around 10 to 15 riders, and Dubel Hitchcock and the rest at over a minute behind. Matt, with 18 kilometres still to go, no movement, too much of movement anyway with those riders at over a minute. Do the likes of Van der Breggen, Harris and company have a chance of getting back in?
From experience, given the gap is that big, it would be very, very difficult. What they need to hope is that there's almost like a tactical standoff in the front group, and that they ease off a little bit, and that the group behind gets coordinated and works together. But although I've never really seen a gap this big come back, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility. The more Zwift racing has evolved over the last few years, the more we've actually seen groups get back into contention. But the key, Rob, as is in real life, they need to get organised, they need to spend time on the front, they need to use each other to rest and to ride on the front, to sit in the slipstream. They need to be coordinated. But with most teams, Rob, having representation in the front group with some really key riders, as you can see from the list on the right hand side, it's not looking good for that group behind at the moment with only 18.2 to go.
You can see a few of those featherweight power-ups being used. The little green symbols, the feathers that light up above the riders who are using them. Those 10% lighter, so that they can climb a little easier, just taking the pressure off the legs. And if you remember, at the top of this climb there should be a gate that riders go through to collect a new power-up, if I'm right in thinking that.
That is correct. They'll go through basically they're doing the reverse KOM, and there's an opportunity over the top of that climb. It's quite a flat top to this climb, actually. The steepest part, as I mentioned before, comes at the bottom, and this is this little roller coaster section. They're just exiting, just going across the bridge now. They'll then head just through the cobbled village, and then they will actually.
And we will get a new power up, Matt, just at the other side of this bridge.
We will indeed, and it's
there
really
is the
important.
arch, actually.
Yeah, indeed, Rob. It's really important that these riders, because there's not a massive gap between each power-up, it's important that they use them when they can. Because even if you use an aero power-up on a little drag or a featherweight power-up on a small incline, what that's going to do, even if you don't want to attack, is actually make you more efficient for 15 seconds. So it's crucial that these riders use the power-ups, even if they're not thinking about them using them in an aggressive way. So that could be the difference at the end, is the use of these power-ups. And spread over an hour's racing, 11 power-ups makes a lot of difference.
And that's why we're going to see, as we've been talking about all the time, who's used to playing the game, because it is a vital skill in virtual racing. You can see Nelson, Christmas, Longford all at the front right at the moment. Moolman Passio's never been far from the front, has she? And there she is again in that green jersey representing South Africa on her birthday. Sarah Gigante as well for Australia, and some huge names coming to the front now. And I'm glad you mentioned Eleanor Barker as well. I mentioned right at the front of the broadcast, for anybody who might have joined late, she actually came home from a trip to the United Kingdom, I think it was a couple of weeks ago now, and because of the current COVID rules, she had to spend 2 weeks inside quarantine. So she's been on her turbo trainer non-stop. She'll have been doing more Zwifting than anybody else. She should have the form.
Yeah, she should have the form. And also, Rob, while we're talking about Eleanor Barker, it's worth talking about her ridiculous pedigree. She's the current points race world champion on the track. She's an accomplished road rider as well. You know, junior time trial champion of the world back in 2012, 5 times a track world champion, and she's the current Olympic team pursuit champion as well. And clearly she can ride very, very well on Zwift, and is a rider, Rob, that's used to riding at this sustained sort of pace. Think about the effort of going out of the blocks in a 4,000 metre pursuit. Very similar to a Zwift start, you're straight on it, but as you said, that 2 weeks in quarantine, well, we shall see. She rides on the road at the moment for the Tekkers team, a brand new team that's formed over the last year or so. That would be a big coup if Barker were to win this one.
I wonder if she's got enough room left for any more jerseys and trophies with all the things she's already won. As we look at Georgia Simmerling in Canada at the moment, both virtually on the screen in the middle of that group. As things start to heat up a little bit, you can see the watts per kilo rising, above 4 for most of these riders here on the graphic on the right hand side, with Anna Henderson at the front and Tanya Irat just behind her. That is the average power data you're watching as this starts to level up over this bridge again here.
Another dangerous rider towards the back of that group, just currently highlighted now, is Lou Bates. She's riding as a wild card, but she normally, well, she's British, but she's riding as a wild card, and she is exceptionally talented. One of the best riders out there. Rides for No Pins R3R in Zwift. She won a round of the recent Zwift Premier League as well, the new Zwift Racing League, so she's in very, very good form indeed. Actually had a first and a second in that series, and again, one of those riders within this front group, Rob, that really knows how to sit in the wheels, really knows how to save energy, and she will like this finish as well. She can sprint well on the flat, but she can climb well as well, so watch out for Lou Bates in that grey stripy kit just at the back.
Well, Longford at the front now putting in a little bit of an acceleration. And again, nobody really completely lighting up the numbers just yet. They know that in 15 kilometres time it's a finish, but of course the climb will decide as well as the power. You see the gradient rising as we're going up here on our penultimate KOM, 4% now, and at this point we're just over halfway through the amount of climbing that you have to do in the whole race, which is 483 metres. Jackie Godber of the United States of America, US kit on in real life on the left hand side, bottom left of your picture, and putting up at that, well, 600 watts there.
I know, look at that, it's 8.5 watts a kilo. They're using that power up, and again, very, very experienced rider. She rides for Vision when she's racing on Zwift normally. She's in the Stars and Stripes colours there, and Rob, they've got an amazing, remember this group is only 25 strong. The United States have managed to put 8 riders in this front group that I can count, and they're really putting the hurt on the other riders, and a good place for any rider to use the featherweight power up is on the steepest section, because you get most of an advantage there as well. So this is the flatter section now, and that drags on now for around a kilometre at only about 4 or 5%, and it looks like Godby has been tasked with setting a really, really high pace, which is thinning this group out now.
It certainly is, and we're starting to see now from around the 20th rider little bits of gaps opening up. For example, we were just talking about Eleanor Barker. She's now at 3 seconds, having to really chase to hold the wheels behind. We could also see just a minute or so ago, Matt, that the group was bunched up on the road. It's very much stretched out here.
Yeah, it certainly is. When it's bunched on the road, means that the pace has just dropped a little bit. Riders are thinking about saving energy for later in the race, saving energy primarily for the climb, because they're going to go very, very deep. But as you said, there's like that teardrop shape now. A couple of riders at the back just starting to struggle, but nobody as yet has been dropped. It's Lauren Stevens sitting in last spot in that group, one of the 7 or 8 American riders in this field. But just looking through, still got Hannah Ludwig in there, as Shayna Powless from the United States, Lauren Matson-Coe from the US, Tacey Nelson from the US, as well as Kristen Kolczynski. So Kolczynski now going off the front here. Good little move by the American.
Yeah, Kolczynski putting in the latest dig, and we've seen, you talked about their strength in numbers, Matt, the United States of America is the nation that's taking it to everybody else. They're taking it in turns to have little goes now, and this is obviously the tactic. Nelson also comes to the front wearing number 6, whereas the Australians have Gigante just closing the wheel. So we've seen this is a concerted tactic from the United States. They obviously want a smaller group by the time we get to the final climb.
Yeah, the Americans would definitely want an attritional race. I mean, they've got riders that can climb well, they've got riders that can sprint well, but they just want to try and thin this group down and increase their chances, because looking at a simple numbers game here, Rob, they've got around 40-45% of the composition of this front group, given there's lots and lots of stars and stripes. There's a fair few GB jerseys in there, of course, that familiar white kit with the red band, as we look at Hannah Ludwig, a very, very good rider from Germany there, applies a trade for Canyon SRAM, only 20 years of age, but a big, big hope. It looks like she's in her weights room there, Rob.
Hannah Ludwig at home. And again, you can see the numbers being put up there. The central number is the cadence, RPM at 85, speed she's travelling at 46 kilometres per hour. And this is the power now being taken on by Nelson. It's Nelson who makes the latest move, and we're seeing yet again, once more, it is the United States who are really, really digging on.
Yeah, Nelson just rolls across the drop from Tacey Ludwig. Quite often in Zwift racing, of course, we get points across the top of these climbs. It's just a simple scratch race today. First across the line will be the rider that wears those rainbow bands, and they'll get to wear them for the next 12 months or so in-game on Zwift, whether they're training or racing. And also, Rob, they can get to one in real life and head down the cafe with that nice pixelated rainbow band jersey. And of course, the first ever wearer too, so there's so much at stake here.
Well, descending here, and this is the road that they're going to be climbing from in the other direction by the time we get back for the final climb. And as you can see, Matt, a lot in the aero position, which indicates you've got a gradient of plus 9% here. So that's exactly what we're going to be climbing when we come back to the finish.
Exactly. This is they're going down the part that they will finish on. It's steep. It's over 58. When you travel at over 58 k's an hour in Zwift, you can, and when the gradient, as you said, is at a certain point, you can freewheel. So that's another opportunity to save a little bit of energy, even if it's just for 5 or 10 seconds. The opportunity to freewheel, just get rid of that lactic acid a little bit, have a chance to take a breath, sip a little bit of a drink is absolutely vital. So again, a lot of riders who might not know that might be pedaling down those descents, but as you can see in this front group, all accomplished Zwift riders, most of them taking the opportunity to drop into the aero tuck and save a little bit of valuable energy.
Bunched up once more as we're just over 11 kilometres to go to the finish. Going to head back out into the sea, under the sea, and uphill again. And once we go uphill for the final time, our race will be decided and history will be made. The first ever rainbow jersey to be given out in the virtual world. The first ever major sport to have an eSports World Championship. Cycling leading the way today, the UCI and Zwift making history. And one of the riders on your screen looks set to become the first ever world champion. Just over 10 kilometres to go. And all the big decisive racing still to come. Matt, this is one of the more interesting features. You're in a fish tank here, an actual one. I think I've seen whales, sharks, just about everything. You might hear the Jaws music in a moment.
Indeed, it's just great. I do love myself riding in Zwift. I mean, as I said, the attention to detail, the imagination of these worlds is wonderful. And this Watopia, of course, was the first world ever created for Zwift. And they're going underneath the ocean. This is Ocean Boulevard, and they literally are going underneath the ocean. Look at the dappled effect as the ocean reflects the light on the tarmac there. And if these riders do look closer, they will be able to see sharks, whales, manta rays. There might even be a bit of Finding Nemo in the mix.
We're trying to find our first ever World Championship winner.
We are.
That is Borghild Løvseth of Norway. Happy to be training inside, I think, at this time of year. Of course, the Norwegian national jersey on the wall behind her. And in the game, she's just moving to the front of of the group. You can just see at the top of your picture in that very snazzy red, white and blue jersey of Norway. Lauren Stevens up there as well, as we get our habitual sighting of Ashley Moolman-Pasio, who's been on the front more than any other rider, I think, so far.
Yeah,
the way she
clearly
races.
knows how. Yeah, she's always been an aggressive, tenacious rider, and since lockdown, she's really adapted to riding on Zwift exceptionally well. Of course, she's very light. She's only weighs around 49, 48 kilos, so she goes uphill very, very quickly indeed, and has really got to grips with the nuances here on Zwift. The way to deploy your power, the way to carry the power through on the false flats and descents. All of these little nuances are very, very important to maximising your efficiency in game. And Rob, interestingly as well, because the amount of time she spent training on Zwift, when she went out back into real life and trained up one of her favourite climbs near Rocacorba, she actually took a couple of minutes off her personal best. So with the training benefits of riding indoors on the Zwift platform, absolutely second to none. So her performance has improved massively, and it's showing in game.
Yeah, not just an aid to get through lockdown, very much a training aid. And I think a lot of people have opened their eyes to that this year, and it might have influenced quite a bit of the results we actually had on the road, and we're going to see how it's affected cyclocross with that season now underway. For the track riders, it's been a little different, hasn't it? Of course, with the indoor nature of their sport, there has yet to be too much track racing resumed, but if it does and can resume in the new year, we might see the influence of how virtual racing and training has seen that. As you can see that Annemiek van Vleuten is near leading the efficiency rating, but the problem for her is she's a minute and 20 odd seconds behind in the final group. She's not going to be a factor as it stands, I think.
No, not with only 8.8 k's to go, Rob, but no, she's certainly riding the most efficiently, as you said.
The first ever time that we're seeing elite community Zwift riders competing with professional road cyclists, triathletes, crossers, track riders. We've got winners of Monument Classics, we've got Grand Tour podium finishers, Olympic medalists and a Paralympic legend all in the same race. An absolutely incredible coming together of everybody in the virtual world. And here in Watopia, we're just 8.4 kilometres away from seeing our first ever Esports World Champion in any of the major elite sports crowned. It's an historical moment, and Matt, it's time to get serious now with 8.2 k's to go.
It certainly is, Rob, and as you said, we've had 3 of the 4 climbs today. Total elevation today of 483 metres over the 50 k's, and yeah, we've got that sort of gently undulating approach to the final climb. They've been up it once, but this time when they cross the line, they won't be taking a breath. It'll be the battle for those rainbow bands. So there's going to be a lot of nerves going on now, Rob, for these riders. They're thinking about how many riders they've got in this group. They're going to be communicating as well with each other. Communication in game across to teammates. They'll all have a director sportif, generally speaking, who'll be talking to them via WhatsApp or via Discord, just to make sure that if there is a plan, it's going to plan. Of course, any plans, either in real life or in game, can change. So there might be a little bit of readjusting going on, just depending on how people are feeling. But this group of 25, Rob, has stayed steady, hasn't it, for the last 10 or 15 k's? Still 25 riders in this front group. Nobody's been dropped, despite that little bit of a manoeuvre on the last climb by Kristen Kolczynski. It's still the 25 riders strong that look like they're going to be heading to this final climb all together.
Yes, the story of the race so far was that in the first half an hour or so we saw these 25 riders show that they were stronger than even the reigning world road champion. Of course, time trial world star, former world road champion as well in the likes of Van der Breggen and Van Vleuten. Some bigger names, of course, we mentioned the Paralympic legend Sarah Story, who's got more rainbow jerseys than we've had hot dinners, I think. All of those riders kept behind in that group. You can see now at 1 minute 22 we've got Mika Dox, the only Belgian rider, at 2.5 minutes as well. And these are the 25 riders with 7 kilometres to go. We've got the only representative of the rest of the world team up the front right now, and that's Lou Bates, British rider. And we're looking at Shayna Paulus, who's in the middle of the group and now on the bottom of your screen.
Yeah, Shayna Paulus, an exceptionally talented rider, rides for Team 2020 by day. Of course, the first time wearing these the US Stars and Stripes in game, and she's looking pretty comfortable. sitting at around 3.5 watts a kilo. That'll be kind of reasonably easy for her. As you can see, she's got the headphones on. I don't think many of these riders will be listening to music. That'll be communications to her teammates and to the team manager, because the US are dominant. They've got, as I say, at least 8 riders in this front group, all of them with different kind of capabilities. Some can sprint well, some can climb well, but first and foremost, they can all take the punishment of riding at or around threshold for nearly an hour.
Yep, I count 8 USA jerseys in there as well, Matt. You talked about the headphones. That is the equivalent of the race radio, isn't it?
Basically, yeah. There's various platforms they can communicate on, but generally they'll use the gaming platform Discord, so they can have real-time conversations with very little latency, communicate to each other, make sure everybody is okay. Basically, it's like you'd see in a road race. You'd have the DS speaking to you in the car. This is pretty much the same sort of situation, but it's even more intriguing because people are placed all over the world. Of course, the Americans will all primarily be in America, of course, but their DS could be somewhere completely remote. So making sure they're communicating at all times is absolutely crucial. So there'll be a lot of chatter going on at the moment, especially heading in towards the last few Ks now.
Well, you could just see there a hairpin or 180 turn. They're going ever so slightly uphill here, but this isn't the steep section of the climb. That comes once they've got over this little hill to the left-hand side where they'll turn, and then they'll head back towards the finish again, and it's that uphill finish, that 5% gradient for 900 metres, which is quickly approaching now.
Yeah, they've got to go over the bridge, through up this. You just see on the top of the screen there the 2 big statues, those kind of cycling statues. They'll go past. That'll go past those next. Well, they've already been over there, but that's the reverse little KOM. But as you say, 5.9 Ks to go. There's a couple more opportunities to get power-ups as well, Rob. So when they go through the finish marina, that'll be the last opportunity with about 1,800 metres to go to get a power-up. But given the way the final climb is with that steep bottom section, the flat bit halfway up, and then the little bit before the kick to the line, you could benefit from both the aero power-up and the featherweight power-up, but obviously you'd want to deploy them at different times. So it's a 50-50 chance of getting either one or the other, but given the experience of these riders, that could determine how we see the final climb being ridden. And that's what's so fascinating about the gamification element. You know, everybody's kind of in the same boat, it's randomly given 50-50, and that's going to be fascinating, and the riders are going to be keenly looking at what power-ups they get with 1,800 metres to go.
I was going to say there'll be a lot of people watching around the world asking how those power-ups are given up. You say it's completely 50-50. I guess it's the equivalent of being in a game show, pressing a buzzer and just wondering which logo is going to come up.
Exactly. Well, they're just going through the Italian villas for the final time, just on this cobbled section, and again they will get that little bit of extra resistance given to them. They have to push on a little bit more to keep that pace high. But just picking out a couple of names in this front group. Tracy's there, Hannah Ludwig from Germany, Danny Christmas is still there for United Kingdom, Georgia Simmerling from Canada, Brie Vine of Australia, Eleanor Barker still in the mix, Lauren Stevens and Kristen Faulkner there from the United States as well, Ashley Moorman-Passio, the ever-present South African, still in the mix. Emma Belforth is there as well for Sweden, and Lou Bates as well, sticking around the back. So Lou Bates, again, if we look at that efficiency rating, I think Lou Bates has probably rode the most efficiently at all. She's always in the group, but Rob, one of the most efficient places to sit is just towards the back of the group. That's where you get the least amount of drag, and therefore you'll be spending the least amount of energy. So the most amount of drag, shall I say.
Of course, there's a bit of a skill in itself there, because you've got to still pedal to stay in that position, but you can't lay off the gas too much, otherwise you're going to get dropped and have to make an effort to get back on.
Yeah, and once you lose the wheel in game, it's very, very difficult to get back in contact. It often happens, but you have to invest very heavily. You have to really press it. You cannot wait for too long to close the gap. Like when you get dropped from a group out in the real world, you're in the wind on your own, but in game it's that little bit harder. So it really is a fine art to make sure you're saving energy whilst at the same time not risking getting dropped from the group. As we can just see now, the riders starting to kind of jostle for position. This is a nasty little drag actually, Rob. It's a non-categorised climb. It's around 400 metres, but it is actually quite nasty. And we've seen a couple of riders there deploying their featherweight power-ups.
Yep, Van Vleuten still top of the efficiency ratings, but of course she will be saving energy, knowing that she's out of the game now. She'll be riding into the finish knowing that it's not going to be an E-rainbow jersey for her for the first time in her career. You're looking at Hansen, the most efficient in this group, Irat, Stevens, Ludwig, Faulkner, Eleanor Barker as well. We talked about how much time she spent on the turbo and on the Zwift game recently, so she's obviously picked up a few tips and tricks as we see the United States once more wanting to make it difficult again.
Yeah, and look at, I mentioned Cecilia Hansen, the Swedish rider as well. She, aside from Van Vleuten, she's the rider within this group that is the most efficient. As we look at the leaders there, Barrel there, Tacey, Tanya Erath still there. Remember, Erath, this would be amazing if she could win it. A Zwift Academy winner, moving on to the road to ride for Canyon SRAM, a winner of the virtual stage of the Tour de France, third. She was also on the periphery of making the German team for the team pursuit. That didn't quite happen. So she'll be excited, nervous about how this is going to go, but it won't be long now, Rob. 3.3 k's to go. We're on this little undulating section known as the S's. We'll then head through under the rocky bridge back down to the marina, and then the finish, well, not quite in sight because they've got that final forward Watopia KOM to go.
This is rather cruel, isn't it, to any of these riders who've raced on Zwift before and are used to finishing down on the flat in the town with a bit of a sprint, because once they get there, they've still got around 1.5 kilometres to go.
They certainly have. I mean, there's a couple of riders. It looks like Jackie Godbee's now trying to attack off the front. Good little move here by the rider from the United States of America, trying just to open up a bit of a gap, just trying to maybe take the others by a surprise.
Now this is Moolman Pasio who's moving up to the front as well. She's decided to make it harder too, with just 2.8 kilometres to go, has a little bit of a gap and starts to put out the bigger numbers. It's the other riders who really have to work hard to chase. Tracy's behind of the United States. Here comes Brie Vine as well, and once again it just has the effect of stringing things out, and each and every rider coming up to the front, putting in those little bit of a digs, but it's the final dig on the final climb that looks like it's going to make the difference.
Yeah, look at all these little ride-ons that are being dropped. Anybody who has the Zwift companion app can actually give these riders a ride-on, filling their pockets up with luminous thumbs up. They're going to need all the motivation they can get as they head towards the finish line here, Rob. Remember, this is the final chance in about 300 metres time. That will be the final allocation of power-ups. 25 riders thundering down towards the marina and then back up the climb. This is going to be a thriller here, Rob.
Yep, the ride-on's the equivalent of a social media like, if you like, in the Zwift game environment. So 2 kilometres to go, and the first ever rainbow jersey is up for grabs here in the virtual world. Watopia's placed host to a pretty selective race so far. 25 riders got away. They've stayed away and increased their gap on the likes of Van Vleuten and Van der Breggen, the world champions. Ashley Moolman, champion, is here up towards the front. You can just see behind Barrow, Gigante, Godbe, Lovesit, and it's Moolman Pasio in that green of South Africa. But remember, the final 900 metres are uphill, and we've got big gradients, very, very big gradients indeed.
We have, it's steep at the bottom, very, very steep, that first hairpin. And here, Rob, what they're going to want to do, this is a fine balancing act with 1,600 metres to go. They want to make sure they're not too far back, but not right on the front, taking that draft. They want to sit in the wheels as much as they can, but at the same time, make sure they're in a reasonable position so they don't have to move up too much on the lower slopes of the climb. As we Tacey here, use the power up very, very early indeed. That is a bit of a surprise. Tacey now moves to the front, 8.9 watts a kilo. This looks like it's an attack rather than trying to string things out, Rob.
Well, the United States really taking this, wanting to make the race difficult, very, very serious indeed, as Tracy using that right on the front of the bunch before the climb really kicked up. There's around 150 metres to go before it kicks up. There we go. It's an uphill gradient all the way now at the end of this bridge, all the way to the finish, inside the final kilometre of the first ever Cycling Esports World Championships, and we're on to the final climb. It's Tracy there at the front. You can just see Ludwig and Christmas behind, and she's having to up a gap of 4 seconds here now.
Well, this is the steepest part of the climb here, Robert. She's sitting on 5.5 watts a kilo, but looks what's happening behind. Ashley Moolman Pasio, 10 watts a kilo. Sarah Gigante from Australia, 9 watts a kilo. The power up being used, consummate use there by the South African of the power up on nearly the steepest part of the climb. And Rob, she's moving clear, half a second clear now she is.
Ashley Moolman Pasio is on the road, been 6 times a national champion. She's won some huge races in the classics, and here she is with Gigante also putting up big numbers out behind at 8.8 watts a kilo. It's just less than a second of a gap now for Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio, who you can see in real life on the bottom left of your picture. Half a kilometre to go on her 35th birthday. Gigante, the Australian, looking good though, and there's around 3 seconds to Kolczynski and co behind.
Well, Gigante now is just sitting on the wheel here of Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio. It's really leaning on it now. The gradient here, a constant 6 or 7%, then it moves round to the right, then it drops down, but it looks like Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio, Rob, has opened up a tiny little bit of a gap with around 300 metres to go.
It's another dig from Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio. You can see in the bottom left-hand side of your picture, putting out 400 watts now as the road rises again. Remember, in the final couple of 100 metres, it really does level out. And there you go. There's the gap, but it's minute to Gigante, who sits on a wheel ready and poised. Lauren Stevens in third place. 100 metres now to go with Ashleigh Moolman at the front. Gigante ready to come around, but Ashleigh Moolman still going to the line. Moolman pulls out again. Moolman going all the way. It's Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio who takes the World Championship jersey. History made in Watopia, and it's a South African on her birthday who is the first ever world champion in cycling esports. And Matt Stevens, that was some ride from Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio.
Well, Rob, absolutely superb stuff. As you said, on her birthday, making history, but importantly, she lit things up from the very, very start, used that featherweight power up on the steepest section, and then kept it going. There's that little bit of a lull halfway up the climb where she managed to keep it around 350, 400 watts. But I was worried about Sarah Gigante, who nearly got onto her wheel. But this, rather than a sprint, Rob, was a concerted effort around 6-7 watts a kilo, keeping the pressure on, and nobody could match it. Gigante nearly had it, and I must admit, I thought Gigante would roll round it, but that power, that experience, that drive, that willingness to try and win and go deep has paid dividends for Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio. Absolutely wonderful stuff. Here's the final few moments. What a thriller that was, Rob.
And at this moment, I'm expecting Sarah Gigante to come around her, being on the wheel and ready. But you could just see that Moolman-Pasio was on the limit, on the rivet. And it was the exact same for Gigante. She had no more to give. And even 50 metres from the line, you're wondering when it's going to happen. It just didn't, though. And Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio deservedly winning, probably being the most aggressive rider in the race.
Yeah, I mean, she was happy to set the pace earlier on. She was always very well positioned, always willing to give out a little bit of a nudge just to test her legs and maybe help thin out that group. But there it was half a bike at the end. Third place going to Cecilia Hansen of Sweden. So we have a South African, an Australian and a Swede on the podium in the first ever championships. Well, that was a real thriller, but she timed it so well. But it'll be interesting to see, Rob, what her power numbers were on that final climb, because pure and simple, Rob, nobody could live with her for that minute and a half effort when she lit the afterburners.
Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio, 40 wins on the road in her career, and in the virtual world in Watopia, Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio is top of the standings. She's the brand new first ever maiden world champion in cycling esports. She's beaten Sarah Gigante, who finishes second, with Cecilia Hansen of Sweden in third. Stevens and Godbe making up the top 5, with yet more Americans in the top 10. It's Langvad, Matson, Belforth, Kolczynski and Vine rounding up the top 10. 6 seconds separating them. But right at the top there, the headline name, the name we will remember as a history maker, a trendsetter. It's Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio. And well, 4.4 watts per kilo was average power there towards the end, with Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio donning the rainbow bands. Well, Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio at the top of the tree, Matt. The windmills turn behind, and Watopia, well, rests for now at the end of what was quite an inaugural race.
Yeah, I mean, there's a real grace, isn't there, to the way those windmills are turning, in complete contrast to that final climb. It was an absolute bunfest, wasn't it? But I think it's the way that Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio used that kind of strength from the road, used the condition that she's managed to to attain over the last few months whilst training indoors, and then she's really got to grips with the gamification side of it. And remember, she was the only rider in her team. She was the only South African representative, and she put some big teams really to the sword there. But it was a great race. It was quite a tactical race, but attritional too, because we saw 54 women started out, and we had very quickly, after a very fast start, that whittled down to 25 riders. But she rode the smartest race. But that climb, Rob, just showed us that she was the strongest as well. So she rode it shrewdly, but she just had the most firepower, plain and simple.
Well, looking back at the replays towards the end here, this is how she took it on towards the end. You can see Ashley Moolman-Pasio always highlighted as we saw Tracy go from just before the 1 kilometre to go kite. The United States, with all that firepower, really tried hard to break the South African, but not just chasing that attack down. She kept her calm. She kept waiting for the moment. And it was on the steepest section of the gradient she really pulled ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, she used the power up just at the right time. Remember, she's a rider that's only under 50 kilograms in weight. She used the power up on the steepest gradient, and remember, she's light, so that would have put her down to 40 kilos. Putting out that sort of power, nobody could simply live with her. So it was a really good use of that power. But then she had to keep the pressure on, because Gigante looked very good. And once the gap had opened, everybody else were left fighting for the minor places. But Gigante looked strong, but I think the effort of simply getting to the wheel of Ashley Moolman-Pasio meant that Gigante just didn't have enough to try and come by her in the end. And as you can see, Sikta just lost out in the virtual world by half a bike length, which equates to 0.064 of a second. It was very close, but Moolman-Pasio went on the offensive. It was a brave move, wasn't it, Rob? To go with that far to go was a bit risky, but clearly she's done her homework. She's got the form. She's going to be wearing those rainbow bands.
Ashley Moolman-Pasio then, top of the tree. A wonderful women's race in the inaugural Cycling Esports World Championships, and as well as all the accolades for simply being the world champion, she'll always be remembered as the first and a real history maker and trend setter.
Welcome back to the inaugural UCI Cycling Esports World Championships. We have seen a fascinating finish in the women's event, and I'm delighted to say we are joined by the winner, Ashley Moolman-Pasio. Ashley, first of all, happy birthday. What a way to celebrate your first ever rainbow bands. How was that?
Yeah, it was really awesome. I mean, I wasn't a fan of virtual training before the lockdown, and lockdown really converted me. And now to win the virtual world champion jersey, I'm super proud.
And you performed so well during lockdown on Zwift and on virtual platforms. Were you feeling quite confident coming into today?
Yeah, I was feeling quite confident. I mean, my coach and even new director, Danny Stam, both of them sort of said to me, okay, go for a race, but don't kill yourself. But as a very competitive person, I think it's very difficult not to go all out. But, luckily during this part of the season, I have been doing quite a bit of VO2 work, so under-over efforts. And I did quite a lot of it on Zwift, on the course. So I knew what was coming, and I felt pretty confident on that last climb.
I love how you're having the moment recorded for posterity behind you. Ashley, you know what it is to win on the road.
Well,
how does this compare? How does it compare to your wins on the road?
Yeah, well, I mean, I know that virtual cycling is something quite new, or esports is something quite new, but I think there are plenty of other sports out there that have shown that it's going to become a big thing, I think, in cycling as well. So I'm pretty proud to be the first ever esports world champion. Of course, there'll be some that say, it's not the same or it's not as impressive, but yeah, I think in time more and more will convert and they will enjoy it. Of course, the younger generation, I think, is really behind esports. So yeah, I think there's plenty of things to come in the esports world, and I'm very proud to be part of that movement.
And as you say, an extra special honour to be the first to pull on a rainbow bands jersey in esports, the first woman, of course, as well. It makes today and your achievement all the more special. special, doesn't it?
It does indeed. And of course on my birthday. So now it's time to celebrate.
Oh, come on, you've got to pop that for us, Ashley. Save us a glass, maybe.
Yeah. I'll try not to ruin my computer. But...
No, the pressure's on.
Ooh. This is really not easy. There we go.
It's because you put in such an effort. There we go. Congratulations. What's the laptop? Ashley, congratulations on your rainbow bands, and once again, happy birthday.
Yeah, I've been on a diet to be sure that I'm a good weight for this race, so now it's time to drink and enjoy the cake.
Christmas starts here, Ashley. Well done. Our new world champion, Ashley Moolman-Pasio. What a way to celebrate your 35th birthday. Well, the racing is not over yet because it is now time for the men's race. And once again, we can join your commentators, Matt Stevens and Rob Hatch.
Thank you, Orla, and all ready and set to go again in Watopia. These are the nations taking part, 20 nations this time, and a wildcard team. Portugal involved too in this particular race. Ireland have a representative as well. And let's have a quick look at the course that they're going to take on. Well, it's the same 50-kilometre course, 4 climbs that we just seen the women race on. 4 climbs along the course of it, 483 metres of climbing to be done along that way. It is the figure 8 reverse with the hilly finish in Watopia. And you can see the riders taking on the figure of 8 and up for 483 metres of climbing. And that is 1,500 feet and 31 miles for those of you watching and working in old money. So that's the route. We've seen the nations and some of the riders to watch. Freddie Ovett, of course, already a winner in virtual racing. Look out for Tom Pidcock as well. There's Rigoberto Urán, who always puts his hand up for plenty of racing. And there's the Zwift Power #1, Lionel Sanders of Belgium, one of the favourites. Look out too for the likes of Como from the United States. McGlinchey's a Zwift specialist. And on the road, Edvald Boasson-Hagen, alongside the world hour record holder, Victor Kapenaerts. So from the riders to watch, let's have a quick watch of them now, actually. Let's have a look at wherever they are around the world. Outside on balconies and garages, pain caves and bedrooms. They're the pain faces of the riders trying to fight it out for rainbow jerseys. So let's go and have a look at them in the virtual world then. Let's get down to racing. I'm Rob Hatch and alongside me is Matt Stevens. And Matt, we've seen some pretty aggressive racing so far. Not too many riders out the back that I'm seeing yet.
No, I think we've still got a group, Rob, haven't we, of around 60 riders in this front group. And lots of countries still in the mix, and some big names here as well. Ollie Jones is up there, you know, a real specialist on Zwift. Former Zwift Academy winner as well. Edvald Boasson-Hagen just moving up into that group as well. Michael Volgren and Tom Pidcock. Tom Pidcock from Great Britain, of course, and he's midway through. Well, they just started the cyclocross season, so he's again an accomplished rider on Zwift. Well, he's again one of the most accomplished riders in the world at the moment. Of course, moving over to the Ineos Grenadiers next year, but it'll be interesting to see how he fares. But yeah, we've got a sizable group so far. We're still a fair distance to go, 28 k's.
61 riders up the front. Let's have a look after 21.8 kilometres ridden so far, how things went in the opening kilometres. Well, they left Watopia and went up the hills, as you can see. Plenty of power-ups being used on those first climbs. You can see Ed Clancy towards the back there. Ryan Gibbons as well for South Africa. Of course, on a winning streak. No pressure there, Ryan. Already part of what was a successful team in the virtual Tour de France with this then NTT team. Got some huge names just hanging around in a bunch right now. Rigoberto Urán, remember, racing at altitude as well. He lives in Antioquia in Colombia, so that's something else for him to deal with. At the odd little bit of pressing at the front, but as Matt was saying, nobody able to really get a big gap so far. They've been uphill once, down Dale back into town, through the finish line again, and they're now heading out there with Freddie Ovett, who is already used to winning things on this platform, taking a look at how it will look at the finish. Approaching the halfway point in the race, back live, and looking out at this young man, Vujassin, the man from Liège in Belgium. He's highlighted there. He's making his debut really riding amongst all the cross stars, monument winners, Tour de France podium finishers. But of course, he's the Zwift power #1 in the world, man.
He certainly is. Vujassin, a very, very accomplished rider. As he said, has won. Well, it's very, very consistent on the Zwift platform. He's won a lot of big races, but it's very, very consistent, can sprint well. He's really adapted well to riding on Zwift. Rides for Canyon ZCC. And also, Rob, he's one of the Zwift Academy finalists. So after this and into next week, he's going to be focusing on trying to get a pro contract with Alpecin Phoenix as well. So this could be, again, don't think it'll necessarily directly impact on the decisions at the Zwift Academy, but yeah, he's got a lot on his plate. But yeah, a really, a lovely character. He's got a duck called Gilbert, who I believe will be watching from the sidelines, Rob.
Well, he's from the French-speaking region of Belgium, as Philippe Gilbert is. He's putting out a good 300 watts there at the moment. Obviously knows what it's all about here after winning. There's plenty of races he's won on Zwift before, with sitting in the bunch and drafting. But even the Flemish media, the Dutch-speaking media, in the other half of what is quite a divided country in Belgium, have been talking about him. He was the big star on the Sporza website, the big Dutch-Flemish cycling broadcaster today. They're really talking him up as a possible world champion. Do you think he can beat the likes of, we've got Uran, finished on the podium at the Tour de France, all sorts of riders here.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing, Rob. I think that's the most fascinating thing about the racing we saw in the women's race, and also the potential coming together of riders from various disciplines here. We don't know. Clearly a lot of these riders have focused on this specifically. There are some riders who just happen to be midway through a particular season. The road riders, the cyclocross riders, they're going to be in good form, but a lot of the road riders will be coming off a very kind of heavy season, or a heavy back-ended part of the season. As we know, it's very, very concentrated, so it's going to be interesting to see how they battle it out. I think tactics are going to have to really play in, but if you look at some of the road riders here, pound for pound, let's take Thomas de Gent for example, pound for pound, a lot of these road riders should on paper be able to outperform the Zwift riders, but it's not quite as simple as that. It's about saving as much energy as you can, and using power-ups just at the right moment, because they can make the world of difference, as we know, and conserving energy and using the game to your advantage in relation to the momentum that you get at certain points in the race. But I think this climb to the finish, as we saw in the women's race earlier on, is a little bit of a leveller. So it's going to be interesting. I cannot wait to see if we get a bit of attack, riders trying to go clear, or riders playing their cards really close to their chest and letting it all out on the final climb.
Here's Rigoberto Urán, that podium finisher at the Olympics and the Tour de France, in his living room. You see the sofa behind, his own clothing up on the mannequin behind. He's got his own brand. He's a superstar back in Colombia, is Rigoberto Urán. We saw a minute ago as well, I think it was Ollie Jones who was in his garage in New Zealand. It's after 4 a.m. in the morning there, whereas Rigoberto Urán has just got up and had his morning cup of coffee. Really different situation for everybody riding here. And well, Ollie Jones in his garage, I don't know how many neighbours he's got, but I hope he hasn't got a loud turbo trainer, because he'll be waking them all up at GMT plus 13 hours.
Indeed. Well, that's one thing worth mentioning, isn't it, Rob, that we've got standardised smart trainers for all the riders here. Every single rider in the field will be on a Garmin Tax Neo 2 trainer, so the playing field is as level as can be in relation to the hardware that they're using. And I think it's pretty quiet.
Just under 24 kilometres to go, so just over halfway now. Half the climbing roughly done. And we've got the same two climbs in a different order this time. There's Michael Valgren, riding in that very snazzy, brand new Danish kit. It's one of the best in the peloton, I think. class act. Valgren, I think he'll be down, he's a Monaco resident, isn't he, nowadays? Michael Valgren, who's having a look at himself on the telly, it seems.
Indeed, well, he's a class act, isn't he? Class act on the road, but he's adapted to riding on Zwift very, very well. He was second on stage 4 of the virtual Tour de France. He won the Tour for All at stage 2 back earlier in the spring. And I was just looking at some of the data that Michael Valgren in particular put out for that particular race, Rob, and I think it puts things into perspective in relation to anybody who understands power numbers. His average power, this isn't normalised power, average power for the 58 minutes, 370 watts to win that race. That just shows you what it takes from a physiological perspective to win a race at this level on Zwift. You've got to be very, very fit indeed. You've got to be able to go, well, you need to ride to be able to ride in that kind of pain cave.
We've talked about different objectives. There's Tom Pidcock, who should be approaching top form. He's turning professional in a few months, in March, on the road with the Ineos Grenadiers, but we all know about his exploits on the cyclocross field. He's currently still with Trinity Racing there. He's racing on the elite level right now. He's been on the 23 World Star. He was up there in the Senior World Championships as well when we last had them. Tom Pidcock is an absolute star in waiting, well known already because of his youth exploits, but because we know that this is around an hour's long effort, very, very similar to the cyclocross races he's going to be doing, and given that that's right in the middle of the season now, he should be one of the in-form riders, Matt.
Yeah, he's. You'd have thought so. We know he's riding well. I did manage to speak to him the other day, actually. We had a bit of a conversation. He was really, really looking forward to this. And he's won on Zwift in the past as well. And one of the most multi-talented all-rounders there is in the world at the moment. He won the Tour for All Inspirational on the Innsbruck ring. That was only, I think, his 4th or 5th race ever on Zwift, and he averaged around 340 watts for that. But as you said quite rightly, this sort of effort, this sustained effort around threshold, interspersed with real spikes of power, are what suits Tom Pidcock down to the ground, and he's looking good at the moment, sat in the middle of that pack right now.
Down to 50 riders now, Matt, with Julian van den Bronde of Belgium sitting right at the back of the bunch alongside Lucas Hanston of Germany. We've got Salgueiro of Portugal down there as well. Pavel Bernas of Poland is there. Will Clark, a seasoned professional from Australia, also in the bunch as well. Oh, we started out with more than 70 riders in the main bunch. We've got a group of 6 riders, including South Africa's Ryan Gibbons, who's been dropped at half a minute at the moment. And we've got the rest out the back at a minute and a half. Jack Haig moving teams from Mitchelton Scott to Bahrain at the end of this season. The Australian rider who's gone very, very well in Grand Tours. He's almost 2 minutes behind. Thomas de Gent is at over 2 minutes. Daryl Impey at 5 minutes 40. Esteban Chavez, who's at altitude in Colombia, at 8 minutes. We've seen some big casualties already. And the great British track stars, Andy Tennant at 33 minutes. Looks as though he might well have stopped. And Ed Clancy at 11 minutes back. There's some big damage been done.
Yeah, there certainly is, and since we've come on air, as you said, Rob, the group has whittled down from 60 riders to just 50 now, as Edvald Boasson-Hagen moves to the front. Again, another one of these riders who spends an inordinate amount of time on Zwift. I believe, Rob, legend tells me that he's actually done, at one point, a 200-kilometre plus ride on Zwift, which tells you how much he kind of loves and how well he knows this platform.
A necessity, I think, where he lives, still choosing to live up in the snow in Norway. He's not one of those riders who's gone to the Mediterranean shores, has he, and stayed down there. I know he enjoys his cross-country skiing as part of cross-training as well. But Edvald Boasson-Hagen, who is going to step down a level on the road to the 2nd division, isn't he, next year? But you would still imagine he will be highly likely to be invited to ride the Tour de France with his new team, Total Direct Energy.
Indeed. It's just worth. We've got Lionel Sanders on there on the screen. Again, we talk about, Rob, haven't we, the multidiscipline aspect to this, the first ever UCI Cycling Esports World Championships. Track, road, cyclocross, mountain bike. Because on screen at the moment is one of the finest triathletes in the world at the moment, riding in the Canadian strip there. He actually put some of the best riders on Zwift and the best road riders to the sword back in the spring when he won the Ronde van Zwift around the Richmond circuit, beating none other than Mathieu van der Poel and many others on that occasion. occasion, going long and holding around 500 watts all the way to the line. And he knows how to ride this platform and trains pretty much exclusively on Zwift for the cycling element of the triathlon, so watch out for him.
Well, you mentioned the triathlon there. What about the swimming as well? Because the man on your picture there, Holden Como, in the blue of the United States, has been a triathlete, he's been a swimmer, and as a triathlete he's used to transitions, isn't he? Because he's transitioning to being a 42-year-old fully fledged superstar Zwift rider. He could end the day as world champion, and in light of that we caught up with him before today's race.
This is my third athletic career. It's my third sport. I was a swimmer, a triathlete, and now an indoor specialist, and I feel like I'm a better athlete now than I've ever been in my life. Every time I go like a best time or have a peak power average or something, I'm just blown away. I'm shocked. I'm 42. I thought my best days of being an athlete were well behind me. It's like a brand new discipline. I think it's going to be, a new crop of athletes who are really dedicated to this discipline, who have a physiology that is just really different. I won national championships, the USA Zwift championships last year. In fact, a teammate told me 2 days prior to the race, he thought I could outsprint the pack at nationals, and it sort of hadn't even crossed my mind that would have been a prospect, and that's exactly what happened. I took that really seriously and felt as though I was a representative after that. If I become the world champion, I will definitely take that really seriously and do my best to tend to that temporary position until someone else comes along. But it's the kind of thing that will anchor and define my life for a year. I'm excited about that prospect, no doubt.
Well, he should be excited because with 18.9 kilometres to go, he's still in the pack. He's towards the front of the bunch there. You can just see his name highlighted next to that United States flag. And here he is at home in the United States in the bottom left-hand corner of your picture. And he talked about his dreams for a third athletic career there, Matt. I can tell you that so far on debut here, with this sort of pool of riders amongst the elite, he's outlasted Olympic champions on the track, Tour de France stage winners, Giro d'Italia podium finishers. It's not been a bad debut.
No, he is super focused, and I think it's quite often with elite athletes performing at the highest level, the older they get, the more focused they become and they understand their body. And Holden Como, as he said, the Zwift national champion of the United States back in 2019, applies his trading game for Saris and the pros closet. And talk about experience that he's built up over the last few years racing on Zwift. 640 races, Rob, so that's a lot of knowledge, isn't it? That's a lot of knowledge to bring into the game, and has won 4 out of his last 9 Zwift races, but does like a flatter finish, a really, really good power sprinter. So it'll be interesting to see how he takes the final today as we look at another very, very accomplished rider, Chris McGlinchey of Ireland.
What speciality does Chris McGlinchey have, really? Because, of course, we're seeing a bit of a move here from Tom Pidcock towards the front, just putting in a bit of a dig to see where he can get. Being closed down by Salgueiro of Portugal, but we saw McGlinchey there, the Irishman. He's the only Irish representative. You say he's a Zwift specialist. Is this a course that might suit him as well?
Any sort of course on Zwift seems to suit Chris McGlinchey. He's won sprints, he's won on climbs. He can seemingly do it all. He's got a really, really high 1 minute power, and he's got a very, very good 10-second power as well, which you need to sprint. And again, and nowhere near the amount of racing as Holden Como, but he's still raced 171 times and is a very, very accomplished road rider. Of course, rides with the UCI Continental Team Vitus Pro Cycling on the road, but over the last couple of years is a force to be reckoned with. So definitely watch out for him, because any sort of finish will actually suit him. He's tailored. He's a really, really good all-rounder. As we look at this, a real legend of road cycling, Victor Campenaerts.
Well, we talked about this race lasting roughly an hour. He's the best in the world at hour-long efforts, isn't he? He's the hour record holder, Victor Campenaerts.
Yeah, Victor Campenaerts has been doing a fair bit of research into this event. It really has fascinated him, and he's one of the big names to still be in this front group. But we talk about racing on Zwift and the fact that many of the races you have to be able to hold at or around kind of threshold. And as you said, Rob, the racing is going to be just over an hour. It should suit him down to the ground, but of course it's peppered with these extra little bits of effort as well, and it's how he copes with that that's going to be interesting. But he looks good at the moment, floating it around 4 watts a kilo. so well within the kind of threshold or the area that he can ride in. It's just be interesting to see what he can do later on in the race, and whether he can survive if it whittles down into a smaller group. But good to see him up in the mix.
Through the Italian villas, you could hear the waterfall in the background there as they went past, and we're going uphill again now, up towards our penultimate climb of the day, which will be 2.5 kilometres long, 1.8%, and then towards that final climb, and then back up through the finish line before we get to it. As we saw, it's around 2 kilometres from the finish where we see what is normally the finish line for many races down in the town, in the marina in Zwift. You know that Victor Kapanarts is being followed here by our numbers and our cameras. There's Freddie Ovet as well, the Australian living in Spain nowadays. He's professional on the road too. And the Lennart Turgels, another of the Belgians. They put out a really strong squad here, and we already talked about the cyclocross efforts, didn't we, in Pidcock? Well, the world #1 crosser in Elie Iserbyt, for the first time in his career, he's risen to the top of the UCI world rankings, and Elie Iserbyt is another man to look out for who's in this front group as we take a look at Freddie Ovet. Oh, it looks like he's texting his director sportif.
God, if any of the other riders saw that Freddie Ovet is texting, they'd be like, flipping heck, you know. I thought this was supposed to be hard. He was texting Rob, riding at about 300 watts. But look at the detail for Freddie Ovet here. He hasn't taken his sleeves off. He normally does take his sleeves off, but look at that, double fanage. Fans both left and right, as you see the peloton roaring underneath. A little squirrel there, bounding around. But Ovet, very, very cool there.
Very cool in more ways than one. Of course, you see he's got 2 fans there keeping him cool. Marginal gains even in the virtual world. Just over 15 kilometres from the conclusion of the first men's Esports World Championships. Cycling really blazing the trail for the rest of the world. The UCI and Zwift really have to be congratulated. The first sporting governing body to officially sanction an Esports World Championship. And of course Zwift, the platform putting it on, as we get to see this 9% gradient now rising above the city below, past that huge statue of the cyclist. And then heading back down towards the part of the course that they'll climb towards the finish, Matt. They're going to see the climb in reverse here. They're going to descend it.
Yeah, this is basically the reverse KOM. It's a nasty little climb, but most of the heavy work, the heavy lifting is done earlier on. But there's been some big gaps here. We just saw a raft of power-ups being used, and it's worth touching on. We talked about it in depth at the women's race as the field starts to string out here. I think it is Freddie Ovet on the front, a winner of a stage of the virtual Tour de France, took out stage 4 as well as getting second on another stage as well. Very, very classy rider on Zwift. This is this flatter section, but no, there's only 2 power-ups available. Normally in-game we see 5 power-ups available, only 2, so it's the featherweight power-up that we'll see used in-game. 11 opportunities to pick up a power-up, and the other power-up available for these World Championships is the aero power-up, which makes a rider more aerodynamic and therefore more efficient for 15 seconds. And the lightweight power-up has changed as well, 10% lighter for every rider for 15 seconds as well.
Rigoberto Urán still up towards the front as we take a look at the Norwegian Vidar Mail. Just towards the front of the group. Now settling into the centre of it. We've seen Kampenarts come to the front after those little digs from the pair of Canadian riders, Mathilde Alchin and Jordan Chain.
Yeah, this the rider on the screen at the moment, we just saw Vidar Mail. He is a very, very accomplished Zwift rider. Rides for Callas e-racing team. He's the Norwegian Zwift racing champion for 2019. But actually, when he goes out on the road, Rob, he's a mountain biker, rides for the Hard Rock MTB team in the marathon discipline, which is very, very different to the Zwift discipline, which is obviously sharper. You know, a different sort of effort is involved. But clearly, he's managed to marry those two together, and is one of the most fearsome riders out there on Zwift.
This is Julien van den Brande of Belgium now, with around a second advantage over Domenico Pozzovivo. Finished the season well at the Giro d'Italia on the road. Kampenarts up to the front again, so the Belgians now trying to press on as well. You see 8.9 watts per kilo there for Victor Kampenarts. Heart rate right up at 189 beats per minute, so a full effort. And look at how this is strung out now, Matt.
Yeah, this is really strung out. This is the gradient. It's only around 2%, but they've really, really rocketed up this climb, and the pressure being applied by Matteo Dalcin there. Look at all the Canadians really, really riding hard on the front to try and split this up, to try and whittle this field down. This is the only real other opportunity to split things up. But Dalcin there goes over the top in first place, still kicking out, Rob, around 10 watts a kilo. Lionel Sanders not very far behind as well. The Canadians here looking very, very strong and really trying to unsettle the other riders. Perhaps they weren't happy with the tempo that's being set early on, and really setting about making this as hard as possible and doing a very, very good job indeed.
Matt, 4 Canadians in the top 6, 5 in the top 8. It's a team time trial for Canada down the hill here. You can see Sanders, you can see Kristen. There's Dalcin as well. Cote is in 5th place. They really are taking it to the rest of the world.
They are, and Pierre-Andre Coates there as well. I remember Matteo Dalcin, actually, if he rides for Rally on the road, and took out stage 5 of the virtual Tour de France, so he knows how to ride on Zwift as the riders get into that little aero power, that aero tuck as well. But they're soon brought back to hill there. Victor Campenaerts still looking good as well. McGlinchey there as well. Lionel Sanders, Ed Val, Boasson Hagen, Lawson Craddock. We haven't talked about the American TT specialist. A really early adopter, Rob, of the Zwift platform. Jumped online in Watopia way back in 2015 and really loves training on it. And he'd be very, very happy if he could leave today with those rainbow stripes on board. So we've got a really wonderful mix of riders here. And let's have a little look at the damage that's been done, Rob. I wonder how many riders are now in this front group. We've got it down, still around 49 riders are there, Rob.
Only one rider really shelled out there. There were troubles, there were problems. There was a little bit of a gap opening up. Uran, who's now at the front, I know at one stage was 2 or 3 seconds back, but he's closed the gap there. He's hung in there, and of course if he can hang in to the end, you'd imagine that the finish certainly suits him, doesn't it?
No, definitely. Without a shadow of a doubt. The way, I mean, if they can get over the first part of the steep part of the climb and not too far away, although it's a difficult finish, it will actually suit somebody who can sprint well at the end. I see Corey Williams. Great to see another one of the Americans in at the mix there. Corey Williams, the 2019 Amateur United States Crits champion, rides for the Legion of Los Angeles. And that would be very, very special indeed. He's really focused on getting his form right for this event. So he's sat in the middle there. Again, right in the middle of the pack there, Rob, but towards the back is the best place in relation to minimising your effort. You get a real nice drag effect there. So he certainly knows how to ride.
Corey Williams, experienced on this platform, and as you said, riding perhaps for the team with the best name in professional cycling there, the Legion of Los Angeles. It's Corey Williams sitting in the bunch and moving up just at the top part of your picture now as the riders have gone underwater. This is for the final time as they're approaching the 10 kilometre to go mark. And we're not too far away now from another rainbow jersey being awarded. It'll be the inaugural rainbow jersey in esports cycling for the men. 49 riders still involved, 40 kilometres ridden, 10 to go.
Yeah, it's getting, there'll be a few nerves starting to jangle here, Rob, especially with the size of this group as well. Still 49 riders in contention here. Most of the big national squads. We had 78 riders start out today, or on the starting list. 20 teams are represented, including one wildcard rider. As we can just see Muff moving there to the front. Another very, very versatile rider riding for Denmark, shall I say. And let's have a look at the setup of Frederick there. Again, tapping out just around 300 watts, 81 RPM. Equates under the ocean here to around 40 kilometres an hour. And I must admit, he looks pretty comfortable at the moment.
Matt, just jump in here because Julian van den Brande there with an efficiency score of 24.1 speed to watts per kilo. He's still in this group. He's showing that he's head and shoulders above the rest in conserving energy today.
That's very impressive. I mean, just to compare it back to the women's race, I think the best score we saw from efficiency from memory was Annemiek van Vleut with around 17 scores. So that rating here, this is a new metric that we've dropped into the user interface, into the kind of viewer experience here, just to give us an impression, quite simple, on how efficiently the riders are riding. So they're maintaining a high speed at the front, but less effort. So it's like a reverse power to weight ratio. And he clearly knows how to ride this game. So he hardly must have put his nose in the wind, knows how to ride the wheels, knows when to deploy the power-ups at the right time. And again, it's worth mentioning the power-ups. They get 11 throughout the day. The final one comes with 1,800 metres to go. But if you don't use them, it's always a wise move just to let it go, to give yourself a little bit of a rest. As we look now at Max Steadman, a great little climber riding for Great Britain.
Putting out almost 400 watts there, Max Steadman, bottom left-hand side. You can see out the saddle, back in it now. Pedaling away at 90 revs per minute. And it's a speed of over 40 kilometres per hour now as they're up from under the sea and back on terra firma. It's a move from Julian van den Brande. We've just been talking up how he'd saved energy better than the rest, and he's riding away on the dirt and on the boards here. He's ahead of Kampenaerts, and suddenly Belgium are in control.
They certainly are. This is a big, big move by Van den Brande, but he's having to hold 7 watts a kilo, Rob, to be out in front here, but he's drawn the sting of 2 riders with massive engines. Victor Kampenaerts goes straight over the top, and Lionel Sanders of Canada, the triathlete, there's a sense a little bit of danger here. You don't want to let the riders of the calibre of Victor Kampenaerts go clear, and that is our first picture-in-picture of the world hour record holder, Rob. What a sight it is.
Well, a 7.8 kilometre time trial is right up his street, isn't it? And he's certainly made it difficult for everybody else. You can see, though, the reaction is pretty good, as it has been throughout the race. There's been no lack of riders trying to advance, trying to put the pressure on, but each and every time there have been quite a few good reactions, as we're seeing a group of 46, 47, perhaps 48 riders still staying involved. And time running out now to put those digs in. We're getting closer to a couple of uphill sections. Not silly gradients, are they, Matt? But they're opportunities, again, just to put riders on the rivet.
Yep, that is well, in around 3 or 4 kilometres time, there's a nasty little 400 metre drag of around 4 or 5%, which when I ride on Zwift, I always do a bit of an effort on there, and that takes us into the S's, down through the finish and then up. So that's probably the last opportunity to cause any real damage as we look at the figure of New Zealander Ollie Jones. Again, rides for Canyon ZCC, very, very experienced. He's a slightly heavier rider, but can really get over these climbs well. And as you'd expect from a former Zwift Academy winner, knows how to ride very, very well. And he's the sole representative of New Zealand, sat in the middle of that pack, conserving as much energy as he can, with the headband on and the familiar sight of him in his garage, with that cooling towel, a damp towel wrapped around his neck, keeping him as cool as possible.
Just a brief sight of Domenico Pozzovivo back up towards the front again. Really does like virtual racing, and he's not the sort of body type of the guy that you'd assume would be good on these sorts of courses as well, but just shows that he has very, very good power output for his very, very tiny weight. Nice to see he's recovered from that little mountain bike crash he had when he was out joking with Nibali and co the other week.
Yeah, he's of course is going to spend another year, isn't he, with NTT, of course, newly formed Quebec Assos, as they're going to be called next year. But no, rode very solidly in the Giro. And as you said, Rob, he ordinarily, you look at him, look at what he does best out on the road, but somehow he manages to kind of transform and transmit that power and understands how to ride on this platform. And with that climb to the line, you just never know. We could see an Italian winner as we look at one of our wildcards, Lars Foster there, again showing you what it takes just to stay in the bunch here, just staying in the middle there, Rob. He's having to put out around 330 watts.
In the meantime, there's another move, another attack from Van den Brande. It's the second time he's put in a good dig, and this time it's where that road just starts to go up ever so slightly. It'll go ever so slightly downhill again as they head towards that Italian Villa section once more. We watch Forster, but I can tell you at the front that Van den Brande has been putting out 9 watts per kilo and travelling at well over 50 kilometres per hour. Now Jaeger of the United States is up there at 9.3 watts per kilo as well. Once again, everybody just trying to make it difficult. Moff for Denmark in third place too, 8.1 watts per kilo. And never mind riding in their own homes, they could power their own homes with the watts they're putting out here.
I mean, that's another little idea maybe for Eric Min, the CEO of Zwift, to try and get it tapped into the power companies as well, Eric, just to recycle that immense amount of power. But no, they're just coming through the Italian villas here, Rob, for their very last time underneath the bunting, round past that beautiful fountain overlooking the volcano to the left-hand side. This particular section, the riders will get that road feel of the cobbles back through the trainer that they're using, that Tax Neo, to give them that kind of road feel. There'll be extra resistance as well underneath another one of these little arches, and then they've got they'll go over the bridge, and then that nasty little 400-meter climb that takes them to that rolling section, and then back through the familiar site of the finish. Well, it's not the finish, is it? It's the marina finish, and then they've got the climb to come. So we have around 49 riders, Rob, in this front group, and well, it's Van der Brand. He's actually out of the back there, not off the front.
Van der Brand out of the back there. A moment ago, he was off the front. In the meantime, we're looking now at another of the groups. You can see 30 seconds between a couple of groups now. Williams down, and Van der Brand, well, according to that graphic behind, we did see him at the front just a moment ago. 4.4 kilometres to go here. I can tell you that Harm van Hoeke has been up towards the front too. In the meantime, this is Charles-Etienne Chrétien of Canada, and it's the Canadians en masse again. So, Matt, you talked about this earlier on today, people having their earpieces in, the radios on, listening to instructions, and it's obvious that the Canadian sports director has been on the blower, because Chrétien, Sanders, Chain and Côté all lighting up the power numbers at once.
Well, they'll know that that final climb, or that final little penultimate climb, should we say, is significant enough to put a real dig in if you're willing to invest. And they're clearly communicating. They've clearly had a game plan. They're obviously in good form, and it's Shane now who moves off the front. But can he single-handedly maintain 6.5 watts a kilo all through to the finish? But what it has done, Rob, is put the riders behind under pressure, and they've got to now close. But so far, the team of the race has to be Canada, and Shane now has got around a 2-second gap. Let's try and give you a little bit of information in relation to his heart rate that he's going to be putting out at the moment. Well, 177 beats a minute, moving at around 47 k's an hour.
And Shane out there at the front, you can see that's how he looks like. There's the pain on his face in the bottom left-hand side of your picture. He has 1.5 seconds on Sanders, who's his compatriot. Then Van Hoeke, the young Belgian who was so good in the opening week of the Giro d'Italia on the road, is now trying to close the gap as well. He's at 0.5 second, and it is Harm van Hoeke who takes the lead at the front, and Belgium have yet more firepower. This is becoming a highly selective race as we come into the final 3 kilometres now.
Well, Harm van Hoeke is looking very good. Straight over the top of Shane. Sanders is kind of marshalling just a couple of seconds behind there. Michael Volgren has now moved up to the front of this group. Lionel Sanders and Rigoberto Urán is in 6th position here. 2.9 k's to go. They've just got this little rolling section still to come. Actually, it's slightly downhill hill now here, Rob. Underneath the archway, through the finish. Then they'll go through the finishing banner. They'll get their last power up as Van Hoeke looks as if he's going to be brought back to heel by Muff and Williams.
What a story that would be. Rigoberto Urán at altitude in the Colombian region of Antioquia. There he is sitting at the front. We know that he loves this stuff. Been speaking to his sports directors at his team, EF Pro Cycling, and apparently he's the first to put his hand up every time that virtual racing has taken place this year. He absolutely loves it, and he'll be enjoying it even more if he can pull on a rainbow jersey at the end of the day. Osborne is up there. It's Sanders at the front, coming up to 2 kilometres to go.
They're all getting in position here, and I said Colombia would go absolutely crazy. They're crazy already about their cycling, but you imagine if Rigo himself did it. Well, astonishing stuff. He's got himself in the frame here, and this finish, Rob, when you look at the way he's run on the road in the past and the way he's, tussled with the kind of the differences, the nuances of Zwift, you can't rule him out as the Canadians go on the offensive again. Shane now goes clear, 8.2 watts a kilo.
Well, you can see that Urán has been right up there towards the front, just drifts a little bit back down in the group now. It's Shane who's using his power up now. When they went through that arch, they'd have picked up the final power up with 2 k's on the clock. There's just 1.6 kilometres of road between this group and the finish, led by Shane, who has a second on the rest. Valgren is in there as well. No time for slouching now, as there are 500 metres from the start of the climb. The Flamme Rouge, the red kite, and that climb towards glory.
Well, Jane is clear, 29 years of age, hails from Kelowna, rides for the Elevate Webiplex Pro Cycling team, is looking good, but he's been overtaken here. Looks like Michael Volgren has gone early on the bottom of this climb. The Danish rider, winner of 2 classics, rides of course for NTT at the moment, is on the front of this group. Won't be long, Rob, before they hit the bottom of this climb proper. 1.1 k's to go.
There they go, through the Flamme Rouge. It's Salgueiro of Portugal who's up ahead. 8.4 watts per kilo, and they're all having to light it up now. The power-ups are being used. It's the world hour record holder, Victor Campenaerts, 800 metres from the finish line. Steepest part of the climb about to come, being followed by Williams, Jones, Vujassin, who is Zwift power number 1, and Belgium in a great position with Turgels there as well.
An amazing, a lot of riders here together. It's a power-up's being dropped left, right and centre just at the right time. Osborne of Germany up to the front, Foldager as well. Rapp now moves to the front for Germany. 2 Germans, first and second, putting out some absolutely horrendous numbers. 9-10 watts a kilo. They're coming round to 500 metres to go now, Rob.
It is absolutely flying now with half a kilometre to go. The World Championship bands on the back of one of these riders at the top. It's a German 1-2 right now with Jonas Rapp and Jason Osborne behind, Foldager, Fidberg and Ty Williams also up there as well. It's another acceleration from Osborne. Look at that, 12 watts a kilo, and he's got a great gap here. Osborne is out there for Germany, and the Germans are on the way to glory. There's the power up used, a turn around the corner, and the finish line is in sight. 3 seconds for Osborne here, and the Germans are going to be the champions. It's Osborne who's going to be the world champion for the first time in esports. A trendsetter, and Germany have it, followed by Dalcin and Foldager. It's Osborne who is the world champion.
Oh, Jason Osborne there from the BDR elite team. An amazing kind of display of power and timing there from a very, very experienced Zwift rider. Maybe not one of the riders that we'd have expected to win today, but that was a masterful performance by the German. And as you said, Rob, he will take home those rainbow bands, and timed his effort to absolute perfection. Went straight over the top of his teammate with around 300 metres to go and maintained that kind of power. The power-up was already used, so was completely and utterly committed, and there was nothing anybody else could do about it at this point. But still, actually used his aero power-up, Rob, very, very late indeed. So perfect use of that power-up just at the right time to carry him to victory by, in the end, as a handsome margin.
It's the 26-year-old from Germany, Jason Osborne, who is the first ever men's world champion in UCI cycling esports. We wondered who could win. We were expecting surprises today, and we've hardly seen the German team throughout this race. They've hidden, they've waited, but when they went en masse, and it's Osborne who's finished first. He's been up there in the National Time Trial Championships previously on the road, but here he is in the virtual world, which today is his world. He's the world champion, and Jason Osborne will be pulling on the rainbow jersey.
Well, that was an amazing ride by Osborne. As you said, very, very solid time trialist, and is only relatively new to Zwift, but he's won out of the last, 8 races. He's actually won 6 of those and make this number 7, Rob. There you go.
And 2 Danes on the podium in the end. It's Osborne, the winner for Germany, Foldager and Pithison in 2nd and 3rd. Ollie Jones in the middle of the night in New Zealand in 4th. Benjamin Hill for Australia in 5th. Vujassin, the Zwift power number 1 in 6th. Dalcin for the very classy Canadians. Ovett, Larsen and Fidberg rounding out the top 10, separated by 3 seconds. Well, Jason Osborne, the man on the day. 1 hour and 5 minutes and 15 seconds. Plenty of surprises. We saw all the big names up there from the road and the track. We know that Olympic champions finished 20 minutes down. But Jason Osborne, a brand new name for many of you watching, certainly those of you who watched the road. But as Matt said, winning on the Zwift platform, and today he is the world champion. And I suppose, Matt, we've had our first real illustration of just what's possible when you put all these different disciplines together.
Yeah, and I think one of the fascinating thing about Jason Osborne is the fact this is his second sport. He's actually got a rowing background, a very accomplished rower at international level, and clearly has got great heart and lungs, clearly a very, very powerful cardiovascular system, but has jumped on the Zwift platform and made a mark straight off the bat. He really, really has, as well as those performances at national level in the National Time Trial Championships. And of course, Germany's got a great strength in depth, so just an amazing performance. Timed it to perfection, used that power up. I mean, ordinarily you'd think the aerodynamic power up on a climb, it's not the best one to have, but he used it just as the road leveled. So for the last 300 metres, he had the extra aerodynamic effect, which helped him maintain that momentum that he'd earned by accelerating on the climb. So just a wonderful performance, and great riding by the Danes there as well, Rob. Anders Foldager and Nicholas Pedersen, both very accomplished Zwift rider. And look at that, Ollie Jones in fourth there, former Zwift Academy rider. He's going to be proud of that.
Yeah, you talked about his excellent physiology there, Matt, and this is how it played out towards the end in those last bits of the race. Shane was up there, of course. We saw that Canada were really attacking, really trying to make it difficult. Sanders, a name you can see as well, as they climbed out of the marina. The power-ups flying left and right. Pozzo Vivo. And this is the first German move we saw, with Rapp up there having a go. But it's not just the physiology, as you said. It's using those power-ups at the right moment. And I'm sure we'll see in just a moment's time, as soon as Osborne takes the lead here, we've got 500 metres to go. There is Osborne going ahead of his compatriot Rapp, out of the saddle, and there's that power-up, just as he comes to the finish.
Yeah, just as he actually deployed, for want of a better word, the power up with about 300 metres to go. So in terms of his timing, the light of that power up actually only went out just before the line. So look at that, almost perfect in relation to how much time he was able to be more aerodynamic. So and a real battle. Look at all the power ups being used just in the sprint there for the other riders before the lights blink out there. But no, great timing by Osborne, and rode the perfect race. We hardly saw any of it. He conserved that energy. We saw quite an aggressive race. I mean, it was very, very difficult for anybody to actually move clear, but he rode a patient race and did it right at the end.
Well, he did it right at the end, and of course, he is the winner. And I think it might be time for us to go and hear from the winner.
I think it is indeed a way to round up the inaugural UCI Cycling Esports World Championships. Jason Osborne, the first male rider to pull on the Esports rainbow bands. Jason, congratulations on your victory. How was that today?
Thank you very much. It was a completely new experience for me. I've raced some Zwift races before, but obviously this is a much bigger event now. And the field was very tough, like of top guys, and just try to keep calm and keep with the pack and don't race too much, and then left it all for the finish.
And it worked perfectly. Jason, you are a champion rower. You know what it takes to win in that sport. How does this compare?
Well, I do know how to obviously hurt myself a lot. Obviously Zwift is not really comparable with the outside cycling. There's so much more going on. It's the experience that wins in Zwift, like the guys who know how to race it. Obviously I took that strength from rowing to cycling today, and it worked really well.
A phenomenal achievement, Jason. Congratulations. We will let you get to your virtual podium. We had hyped it up. We'd hoped for a great few hours of racing and worthy winners of the Esports Rainbow Bands. Rob, Matt, we had our early Christmas wishes answered, didn't we?
We certainly did. Really entertaining stuff. Surprise winner as we saw there as well. And I'm sure that's no disrespect to the winner in the end. We've seen maybe not much of a surprise when we saw the women's race. We knew that Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio good on the road and, of course, in the virtual world. Here she is in her South African champions jersey. And I think we're about to see her pull on the virtual rainbow bands. There we go. Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio, world champion in cycling esports and the first athlete ever to pull on that jersey. Oh, she's beaten Sara Gigante and Cecilia Hansen. And Matt Stevens, a quick word, because that was a tremendous performance from Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio.
Yeah, it certainly was, and what a way to end her time with the CCC team as well. She's been on that team for a little while. She's going to be moving to SD Works in 2021-2022. So both teams are going to have an opportunity to see that jersey. And yeah, she came into the race as a favourite. She was marked, but nobody could stop her. Perfect tactical race, and in the end, she had the strength to pull it off. But it was a really, really fascinating battle that was attritional from the off, and a wonderful advert for esports as well. It just shows if you put your mind to it, you spend the time on the platform, whatever discipline you come across from, Rob, you can get to be the world champion. And also we've got a lot of riders in that top 10 who've come purely from the Zwift community as well. So it's a real coming together of the cycling, the various elements of the cycling community. But at the end, Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio took the win there.
Well, if you see that jersey in and around your Zwift ride when you're playing the game yourself, you'll know it's the world champion. And here's Jason Osborne stepping onto the virtual podium in his German kit. And what a dream for a rider who came from rowing, who showed he has the physiology and now has a rainbow jersey on his back. It's the brand new world champion from Germany, Jason Osborne, with rainbow bands wrapped around him. And Matt, I think you'll be keeping an eye out for them next time you're on the platform as well.
Yeah, definitely. Clearly, he said he's not been riding on Zwift very long, but he's adapted to it very, very quickly, taking that engine, as he said, taking that kind of that real engine he's got from rowing and applying it. And that isn't unique. We've seen athletes in the past come across from rowing to be Olympic gold medalists in the past. So, but it's a surprise winner, but he took it well. And he did what he needed to do, and that was just to sit pretty in the wheels, not be too phased by the elite company he was riding within, but took that raw power and used it to devastating effect, combining it with the real kind of knowledge he has on when to deploy the power-ups, and took a big win.
Well, thank you very much, Matt. There, of course, is Watopia, which can relax, which can rest, which will wait for you to ride on its roads again after the elite stars have done the job today. Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio, and then Jason Osborne, exciting us, entertaining us, and becoming world champions. Back to you in the studio, Orla.
Rob, Matt, thank you very much indeed. Well, we bring the most topsy-turvy cycling season to a close with a suitably groundbreaking celebration. Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio and Jason Osborne are the new world champions. So, if you see those rainbow bands on the virtual roads over the winter, you know you're sharing the road with greatness. Wherever you're watching around the world, thank you for joining us. Thank you for helping us make history. We'll see you next time.